Former Meet the Press host Chuck Todd ripped NBC Executives this morning and demanded they issue an apology to the current host, Kristen Welker, for their mishandling of the hiring of Ronna McDaniel, the former RNC chair.
Look, let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself, or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here? I will say this. I think your interview did a good job of exposing, I think, many of the contradictions. And look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this, because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So it is, that's where you begin here. And so when NBC made the decision to give her NBC News' credibility, you got to ask yourself, what does she bring NBC News? And when we make deals like this, and I've been at this company a long time, you're doing it for access to audience. Sometimes it's access to an individual, and we can have a journalistic ethics debate about that. And I'm willing to have that debate. And if you told me we were hiring her as a technical advisor to the Republican convention, I think that would be certainly defensible. If you told me we're talking to her, but let's see how she does in some interviews and maybe vet her with actual journalists inside the network, see if it's a two-way, what she can bring the network. So I do think, unfortunately, this interview is always going to be looked through the prism of who is she speaking for, right? I think you did everything you could do. You got put into an impossible situation, booking this interview, and then all of a sudden the rugs pull out from under you. You find out she's being paid to show up. It's unfortunate for this program, but I am glad you did the best that you could, and that's why the three of us are on here to try to bolster that editorial independence.
Now, that should give you a little insight as to why NBC hired her for access to the Republican Party, but it still doesn't excuse Ronna McDaniel's past behavior. After what we've been through with Donald Trump and his election-denying delusions, it is very clear that NBC has screwed up royally hiring someone who helped enable the destruction and erosion of the trust in our government and in our elections. And that fact that Ronna McDaniel represents everything wrong with the Republican Party and our democracy was really highlighted when Kristen Welker played a clip of Ronna McDaniel saying that Joe Biden did not win the election, and then demanded that McDaniel's answer for it. And McDaniel still used coded language to imply that the election was rigged.
You just said Joe Biden's a legitimately elected president. This is the first time you have said this.
It's not. I have said it many times.
Well, this is what you said a year ago to Chris Wallace. I want to play you what you said.
Are you saying, as the chair of the Republican Party, that you still have questions as to whether or not Joe Biden was the duly elected president?
Joe Biden's the president.
No, I didn't ask you whether he's the president.
No, I don't think that. I think
Do you
there
think
were lots of problems.
he won the election?
I think there were lots of problems with 2020.
Do you think
he won the election?
Pardon?
But ultimately, he won the election. But there were lots of problems with the 2020 election. 100%.
And that's fair.
But I don't think he won it fair. I don't. I'm not going to say that.
So you didn't say he won it fair at that point. Can you say, as you sit here today, did Joe Biden win the election fair and square?
He won. He's the legitimate
president.
Fair and square? Fair and square, he won. It's certified. It's done. But I do think, Kristen, let me just say something.
To say that. Why has it taken you until now to be able to say that?
I'm going to push back a little, because I do think it's fair to say there were problems in 2020. And to say that does not mean he's not the legitimate president.
But Ronna, when you say that, it suggests that there was something wrong with the election. And you know that the election was the most heavily scrutinized. Chris Krebs said it was the most secure election in modern history. When you say there were problems, it suggests still that you're giving credence to these allegations of fraud.
When you have states like Pennsylvania go from 260,000 mail ballots in 2016 to 2.6 million, saying, you know what, when you get rid of ID for all mail-in ballots, that's a concern. We should all be concerned about the care, custody, integrity of every ballot. But that's all I'm saying. And you know what? This is a viewpoint of a lot of Republicans, and they think Joe Biden's the president, but they also think there were problems, and both can be true.
But even the Supreme Court, Ronna, didn't take up concerns about the election results in Pennsylvania and a slew of other states.
If you didn't catch it there, the coded language is saying he won fair and square. It's been certified. See, it's been certified is code for they did it behind our backs. You still have to question this. And then she continues to talk about problems in the election that had no impact on the final results. Now, if you're unsure as to whether you can trust Ronna McDaniel, just listen to Kristen Welker ask her flat out if people can trust her.
Very quickly, Ronna, before I let you go, you seem to be changing your tone as it relates to Joe Biden being legitimately elected. Why should viewers, why should people trust you believe what you're saying right now?
I don't think I'm changing my tone at all.
But why should people trust what you're saying right now?
One, I will say this. Kristen, voters right now in this country are going to be making a choice in November, and they don't care about 2020. Republicans and Democrats.
A lot of people see it as fundamental to the country's democracy.
I think they're thinking about inflation, the border, crime, their kids' schooling, and I think it's really important. I represent 50% of this country, whether you like it or not, to be able to have different viewpoints and say, I disagree with that viewpoint, but it's important to hear it, is important to our country. I am not changing my tune. This is where I have been. And right now we're heading into a pivotal election.
Speak to the people who hold you responsible for enabling Donald Trump and his mistruths, his lies about the election. Why should they trust you when they say they don't?
I think you should trust me. I mean, I can't speak to people who don't trust different voices. I think you should be able to hear from different voices. And I haven't been able to talk to you about the concerns I had going into that election, and I wish there was more of a dialogue from that. But let me be very clear. I love this country. I come from a state that's been overlooked. I don't see my state represented in a lot of news media. I don't go home as Chairman Ronna McDaniel. I'm Mom Ronna McDaniel. I go to the grocery store. I do all these things. And I really feel like if our country is going to survive, we need to be able to have difficult conversations like this in a respectful way. We need more of that in our country. But we also can't go into our echo chambers and say, I'm only going to listen to what Democrats have to say, and I'm only going to listen to Republicans have to say. Listen to it and make your own opinion.
All right. Ronna McDaniel, thank you very much for
having
being
me
here this morning.
She's a mom who goes to the grocery store is not ample enough reason for us to trust you. I'm a human who puts on my shoes, so, trust me. McDaniels, what the hell are you talking about?